film or series lit your fuse as a young man and made you have to tell stories on screen?
Yeah, it probably comes down to Jurassic Park. I was 13 years old when that came out, and it was obviously, this huge breakthrough of just this incredible magic trick. How the heck did they get dinosaurs, walking around and all that kind of stuff? And it was the first movie that really made me aware of, I'd obviously watched tons of movies and worn out VHS tapes before that, but it was the first time I understood that, oh, there's a craftsman behind these movies, someone who's making these decisions, whether it's the visual effects artists or the cinematographer or the director himself. That was probably the first thing where I really kind of woke up to, I want to do this, whatever that is, you know what I mean?
Wow. And it was really to me, that movie, a little bit like Jaws was. I mean, people always go, the shark didn't age well, but it's those characters. Yeah. And I guess that's sort of the key. How are you with that? Here's a guy who doesn't want anything to do with kids, Sam Neill, and by the end of the movie, he doesn't feel that way at all. Yeah. What was it just the audacity of those creatures brought to life?
No, it's the experience, man. That's more than anything what I kind of, am always looking to do is give people this experience, this roller coaster ride, have real profound ideas about, our capabilities as humankind, but also like, there's dinosaurs running around. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a perfect movie in my mind. It's not so big that it's like, it's just pure fantasy. It's got great kind of, high concept thing, but it's a genre movie. It's kind of a monster movie. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like a perfect movie. But speaking about that thing of like, that movie was 13 years old. I was 13 years old when they made that movie. So right, that's whatever that is, 20 something years, right? 30 something years. What is it? 35? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that. But the movie still works. Like, it still holds up. Talking about the shark too, right? It's like, it works because the storytelling works, because the shot design works. We've had obviously huge breakthroughs in terms of visual effects, in terms of like, rendering and rigging and lighting and all that kind of stuff, the technical stuff. But it works because Spielberg is a freaking master at the shot design and storytelling through the camera. You know what I mean? So there's only 60 or so shots in the movie. Can you imagine? We have 1,500 shots in the movie. You know what I mean? So It still works because at the fundamental kind of base of it, he's just a great storyteller. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now, was because I mean, and I'm old enough, I'm old, I'm dating myself here, but I can still remember seeing that first Planet of the Apes movie with Charlton Heston.
Sure.
What did all those films mean to you, if anything?
Yeah, so I was born in 1980, right? So I don't have any memories of the story impact of Planet of the Apes. I don't remember, oh my God, it's Statue of Liberty, we're on Earth. I'm jealous for people who had that experience. You know what I mean? But what I do remember are the images. I remember the imagery. That's it's so iconic. You know what I mean? My dad was probably watching it on TV or something, but I remember that the feral humans running through the grass and seeing the apes, taking pictures or on horseback. It's just wild, this upside down world. And of course, I remember Charlton Heston on the beach. You know what I mean? And I love that we have those images scattered throughout this movie, because like our DNA of this movie is obviously stemming from the Caesar trilogy, but we're heading towards that Charlton Heston reality of the movie, so we're kind of standing both feet in either one of those camps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now, so you're on your way up as a young filmmaker. What movie came along that you watched that was so good it made you go, man, do I deserve to be playing in the same sandbox as this person? Can I ever get to that level?
Gosh, honestly, I don't look at it that way, I guess. I'm certainly inspired by movies constantly, right? Whether it's first-time filmmakers or my favorites, you know what I mean? I don't really look at it as like, oh, I can't measure up. I don't know. I have a drive that kind of kicks in at some point when I have to tell this to an audience. They're going to love this. You know what I mean? I've learned to identify that feeling and know when it's something that I want to watch versus something I want to make. You know, so I've learned that over the last couple, you know, years, you know, making movies. But I don't know. I try not to sort of self-judge that way. I try to find that passion, that ambition, and let that kind of be the fuel that kind of pushes me forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds like it's very important to you, you know, making things that you feel like you'd want to see.
Yeah.
That, that an audience, that you can spark an audience. Where did that come from? Like, what movie sort of became a North Star for that feeling where you came out of the theater and you were like, my goodness, this was a ride?
That's a good question, man. I don't know. I have to say that I didn't know I wanted to be a director until film school, right? So I thought I was going to be in I used to like blow up my sister's cars. I thought I was going to be a pyrotechnic effects artist. I thought I wanted to be a stunt guy, so I'd have her swing logs at me and she'd miss and hit me upside the head and give me a lump, So I always loved the kind of craft of how a movie is put together and like all the different pieces. But it wasn't until film school when I did this little short film, that got a big reaction, and it suddenly put in my head this idea of like, oh, maybe I want to direct. I can actually help, be a part of like steering it towards this common goal, along with all these people that come in and around you that help support that and push it forward. So yeah, I don't know if there's any movie that kind of said, hey, direct, except just typically the movies that just blow your mind and you leave the theater saying, oh my God, there's cinema means something new to me now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now, so you mentioned the short films, and I think the first one won the Oscar for a short film.
Yeah.
Animated short,
yeah,
right?
That wasn't my first one. I've had many before that. There was one that I made that was, and I've told the story before, but I went to school with Barry Jenkins. We were in the same class together. And we all made movies together, basically. The little tiny wind-up Bolex World War II cameras with 16mm reversal film. They give us 100 feet and they say, go out for the weekend, go make a movie. So we did several of those things. And I was always trying to like push the boundary on the technical side of things. I made a silent movie era version of The Matrix, and then I made a retelling of that famous Jerry's game. Or is it Gerald's game? The Pixar short where the guy's playing himself in chess. I did that in camera, with the film where I taped off, parts of the thing, and it was always fun to kind of, we're all kind of, healthily competing with each other, in this 30 people class, just to kind of, try to impress each other and top each other and all that kind of stuff, But it was really my thesis film where I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to do my first animated short. With the Pixar was kind of coming up in a big way, and I kind of knew a little bit about visual effects and animation and stuff. And it's like, naively, yeah, I'm gonna do animation, and yeah, that's the one that won that student Oscar, and kind of got me started out here. And then after that, it was 10 years of, trying to knock on doors and make a living,
Well, now so that leads into my next question. Maybe it was a reaction or a success of something you did early, or approval from someone whose opinion mattered to you. What first gave you the confidence that you belonged here, that this is what you should be doing?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I don't know that it's strange. I mean, maybe I feel a little lucky here, but like, I moved out here, and I think a week later I won the student Oscar. You know what I mean? Or one of the student Oscars, or something. It was something very close to that. Yeah. So in a weird way, that was a rude awakening. As I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a director now. Everyone's just gonna give me scripts, and I'm gonna direct. That doesn't work that way, obviously. So that kind of reality set in, and realized, oh, this is actually gonna be difficult. And that's ultimately where 10 years later almost, I think I ended up making my little short film Ruin.
Right.
Where I just said, I was working kind of as my own little visual effects company, doing very small, humble stuff. And I just said, you know what? Actually, what happened is I got out of Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar that first year, and it just blew my mind. You know, just I've been talking about like, you know, live action animation for so long, and he did it. You know what I mean? And I get some people don't like those movies. For me, it was perfect. It was just, I came out of that so inspired, so kind of, you know, just ready to go. And I said, I'm gonna make something. I'm just gonna stop working. I'm not gonna do any more work. I'm just gonna make something. And so I came up with this little short film, Ruin. And I just kind of sat up in my little office, you know, and I told myself I was gonna give myself 6 months to make this thing, and it ended up being 8 months. But I made it, and you know, I just kind of, it was right kind of around the era of Twitter was just starting, and I just put it out on Twitter, and it kind of just went, it just exploded, you know. And it was great because I've had a few moments over my life where I felt like I was making something for someone else, you know, and it doesn't really work. And then when I make something for myself, and I just trust my instincts, and I don't listen to people saying you can't do that, that's not working, that you can't, that's impossible. When I don't listen to that, I usually find success in some way, you know. So that Ruin short was one of those, and I still look back at that today, looking at that, saying, man, that was freaking ambitious. Actually, I'm not sure if I knew what I knew today that I would attempt that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So naivete is kind of ignorance is bliss in that case. You know what I mean?
Well, now you so it took you 10 years from when you won that student Oscar to when you made Ruin. And then you were offered The Maze Runner off of that short. How long did that take? Because that sounds like the dream of every young filmmaker.
Oh, it gets even
on your own.
Yeah, it gets even better than that, honestly, because so this short came out. That's how I met Steve Asbell, who was an executive there. Obviously now he runs Fox, and I'm working with him on Planet of the Apes. So that there goes to show relationships matter in this thing. So he saw the short and he said, "Hey, come on to the lot and let's show this thing. I'd never seen it. I had made a thing in stereo. So I mean stereo like in left and right eye kind of thing, like 3D. And I had never seen it. I had used red and blue glasses because I had no way to project 3D. And so it's like, bring it onto the lot. We'll watch it this way because they had their test screening, their screening room. You know what I mean? And so we invited everyone out there and had some other producers and stuff like that out, you know, and we were talking about, had these plans of this Ruin short. It was going to be this big giant, it was my Star Wars, this big story stuff, all that great stuff, you know. And so we watched the short and it's fantastic. It was fun. I'd never seen it that way before. And as I'm leaving that screening, another executive, Daria Sursek, who obviously now is over at Paramount, you know, pulled me aside and pulled this book like a drug dealer or something. She pulled this book out of everything and said, you know, read this, take it home, tell us what you would do with it. And it's called The Maze Runner, you know? And so while I was thinking about The Maze Runner and trying to figure out how would you do this, and like, okay, I could do this with like Lord of the Flies meets Lost, and I know how to do this, blah, 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 making some artwork. I was also talking to Steve about how do I make that a story for the studio. And so, you know, basically what it boiled down to is after a couple of weeks, I had to go in and pitch my version to Emma Watts of The Maze Runner. And she says, great, you're our director, good luck, you know, go make a good movie. And then I get a call either the afternoon or the next morning saying, hey, they're gonna withhold the offer just for a second. I'm like, what, why, what's going on? Well, because they see they have you coming in to finally pitch Steve Asbell the story for Ruin on Wednesday. And so I go in that morning with this whole Maze Runner thing hanging over my head, pitching Asbell this story we had for Ruin, and he says, okay, we're gonna buy it, let's do this, make this as a movie. So by the end of that day, Wednesday, I had 2 movies at my new home, Fox, you know? And then we were off to the races to start working on the script. That was about a year, I think pretty damn quickly. I think 2013, maybe less than a year, I'm shooting my first movie in Louisiana, you know, making The Maze Runner. So it's pretty wild. No, I understand very fully like how lucky I am, and all the things that goes to like Steve and Emma and all these guys that really kind of, you know, took a chance on me. This kid kind of came out of nowhere and gave me $34 million to go make a crazy little sci-fi kids movie, you know.
Wow. Well, and that cleaned up at the box office.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
On the 2 sequels. Well, now, what would you say was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome to allow you to turn these projects that influenced you into your own language as a filmmaker?
All of these projects, you mean? Like everything?
Well, no, I mean, you know, the ones that influenced you. So the idea is, you know, we all face obstacles, and what was the one that you had to overcome so that you could turn these projects that influenced you like Avatar, and some of the other ones, and Jurassic Park, that had influenced you. Obviously, you don't want to copy that. But what's the biggest obstacle for you to find your own rhythm and language as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I sort of rely so much on instinct, that I kind of don't. Sometimes I don't know why I do what I do, and sometimes I'm wrong. By the way, that leads me astray sometimes. I think that's kind of the trick with experience. What you learn, you start to realize what something is. Oh, I know this instinct, and this is a mistake, and I know this instinct. That's gonna be cool. I don't care what people say. So that's always the trick there. But I don't know. I just find these inspirations and I trust them, I guess, and then it's just about finding the right people around you, because I can't make it by myself. You know what I mean? I had to find, my producer Joe Hartwick, for instance, who's really, absolutely crucial for us, making these movies at such a responsible financial way, which I think is a big thing of what we do. Those Maze Runner movies cost less than this one movie, and those movies made $1 billion, at the box office. So they were very successful for the studio. We made this last Maze Runner movie really super financially responsibly. I think people will be surprised about putting money on the screen and doing something ambitious and trying to push things and then better myself. I'm still freaking learning, man. I learn something on every movie. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what the struggles are. I'm not sure my struggles are any different than anyone else who goes set out to make a movie. It's always different. It's always wild. I think the number one job of a director is to problem solve, basically.
Yes, well, we talked about that sort of fortuitous moment where you make this short film, and then you all of a sudden you have 2 deals at Fox, but then on the other hand, one thing that I went through with you was the mouse guard
Sure.
thing, and what was the toughest part of swallowing that pill? And what did you take away from it that maybe was valuable about, this crazy business?
Well, I think the biggest thing I took away is it should not have been that expensive. There was the main thing when we went into this thing. It was like, it's just got to be under $200 million. It's got to be under $200 million. All these other giant movies like this, they were all over $200 million. And so we focused really hard. Okay, we're going to come in at 170, and looking back on it now, I'm like, of course we couldn't do that for 170. That's irresponsible, And so by that point, unfortunately, it was cooked into the price of taking on the project, and no one could kind of swallow that pill. You know what I mean? So that was for me a huge, just on a producer level, understanding that concept. Also, plenty of directors have these passion projects that crash and burn, and some of them come back. And I still have hopes that we're going to get this freaking thing back on track, at some point, because it is a really special project. I think it's one of the most creative kind of, worlds that I've ever played in. It's just about finding the time to do so and proving to everyone that it's worth the risk, because I really think it's a special project.
Well, and my last question is, obviously there's been a ton of Planet of the Apes movies. What burned in you to tell this version, which lends itself very nicely to more?
Yeah, that was the challenge. I mean, I won't lie. There's an element of these movies that the sheer technical challenge of them is appealing to me, right? I mean, I like visual effects. I'm an old VFX artist. I enjoy the craft side of it. You know what I mean? The process side of it. That challenge, which was steeper than I realized. Honestly, I thought I knew a lot going in, and I realized it's actually much harder than I thought it was going to be. But also because I think this is not to disparage my boss's other movies, like Star Wars and Marvel movies and all these things, but this feels like it scratches a different itch, in a weird way, or it scratches kind of the same itch, but it's a different property. You know what I mean? It's high concept. It's a thinking person's blockbuster. You know what I mean? It exists in this really interesting place. So I thought that was a good fit for me. You know what I mean? And so it just felt like a natural thing. Once we found the story, once we found this character that I got excited about, you know.
Yeah.
It just felt like I have to do this. You know what I mean? And be damned the expectations game that's sure to follow here. You know, how we're going to, I'm sure, be compared to Matt in the previous movies endlessly. But I don't know. I'm confident in what we all created as a team together, and you know, we left it all in the field and did the best we could with what we had. And you know, now it's the world's to take and do with what they will.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, and so your intention is to do 2 more of these, probably, right?
If we're lucky, yeah, we've got ideas of where this could go, and that was the intent up front, right? Is you know, let's try to make something that could have legs, that could sustain beyond just one movie. You know, we tried very hard to make it its own contained movie. You know, but there's literally doors that open that I think exposes a whole bigger possibility of further kind of, you know, fun and conflict and drama and all that stuff that goes along with making these movies, you know.
Well, I believe you made 3 Maze Runners in a row, but you also have this very popular, you know, video game, Zelda. So what sparked you on that? You know, we've seen some video games that have worked out really well, but the storytelling doesn't always translate from video game to screen. What do you see there that you can do with this that will make it memorable?
I just think Legend of Zelda is one of the greatest video games ever made, and it's a story that has wanted to be a movie for so long, you know. And I think a lot of those, you know, I think those days are coming to an end when like the video games can't translate. We've seen it now multiple times. I think it's also a nature of the games themselves, right? So many games were not based on story, you know, they're not based on mythos and characters and great kind of, you know, drama. Zelda always has been, kind of, right? And so I think that's why we're seeing video games kind of translate so well, is that these stories and these games are much more sophisticated and dramatic and interesting. They lend themselves well to good cinematic kind of adaptations, you know. So I have no doubt that the possibility and potential is there. I've just got to do my job and try to make something great.
So that'll be next for you then.
We'll see. Have
We'll
no
see.
idea. Let's finish this movie first. I got another whatever it is, 10 days, and then we'll kind of take a little bit of a breather for a second. This has been a 5-year journey for me. I'm exhausted, and then we'll you know, get to work.
Good for you. Good for you. Hey, well, this was wonderful, and I appreciate you being so generous. And yeah, you I think you knocked it out of the park.
Thanks,
so
Mike. Appreciate it, dude. Awesome. Cheers, man.